3 weeks after over 300 schoolgirls were kidnapped by Islamic militants in northern Nigeria while taking a physics exam, the group in charge of carrying out that abduction, the deadly terrorist group Boko Haram, claimed responsibility today. In a video, Boko Haram leader Abu Gwakar Shekau announced, I abducted your girls, and added that he intends to sell them in the market, something he said Allah has commanded him to do. The ages of the girls are of no concern to Shekau, who said, I will marry off a woman at the age of 9. Boko Haram, which translates to Western education is sin, has killed over 1,500 people in Nigeria so far this year. And after much silence on the girls' abduction yesterday, Nigeria's president, Goodluck Jonathan, made a public vow to find them. Whoever these girls are will get them out, Jonathan said in a TV broadcast. Until now, the Nigerian government has not conducted a formal search for these girls, prompting protests around the world demanding their rescue. Today, 2 of the women protesting the Nigerian government's response to the kidnapping were arrested. 1 remains detained by the government. As it stands, no one knows where these girls may be. Since they were kidnapped, their families have tried to pursue the kidnappers on their own, traveling to remote forests in search of their daughters. 53 of the girls who were kidnapped have escaped. 276 of them remain at the hands of Boko Haram. Joining me now is New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof. Nick, thanks for joining me on an issue that has been embarrassingly and shamefully underdiscussed.
It is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it is just horrific, and one compares the lack of search for these girls with the huge international search for the passengers in MH370, even though there are actually more girls missing in Nigeria. And the fact that the Nigerian government has let this happen and hasn't even undertaken any search at all. It took 2 weeks for the country's president to even mention this. And then to have protesters who were trying to advocate for these girls then be arrested in turn. I mean, it is shameful at every possible level. And
Nick, what do you attribute their inaction to? I mean, it's, on a certain level, of course, this is embarrassing for the state, but given the international outcry that has sort of only been magnified this week, Alexis Okewol in the New Yorker considers that the relationship between Boko Haram and the Nigerian government is a very contentious one, but she also goes on to note that when it comes to Boko Haram, the Nigerian government can't be trusted. Do you think that that's an accurate assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the problem in general has been that the Nigerian government has been very focused not on the suffering of people in northern Nigeria, like these girls in the town of Chibok, but rather on bombings, for example, in the capital of Abuja. And their reaction to that has been to round up every young man in sight in areas where Boko Haram does have support, and to commit enormous human rights abuses that then create more support for Boko Haram. So I think that one reason why the government hasn't been more engaged right now is that girls in general, and certainly girls in remote parts of northern Nigeria, are just not its concern. And that to the extent it is concerned about the Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria, it's, worried about the Sheraton Hotel in Abuja getting bombed, not about girls being kidnapped.
Nick, what does Boko Haram sort of get? What is the strategy here? I mean, instilling fear is one way of consolidating power. Is it the economic incentive, a ransom? I mean, what do you sort of attribute their motives to?
I think that there is an economic element here. I think it's partly showing that it has some power. Both sides have been trying to find soft targets, and what softer target than a girls' school in Chibok. You don't want to tangle with the Nigerian military, so you kidnap people from a girls' school. And there's also an element of these fighters being away from their families and wanting girlfriends, wanting female company. And the way to do that, you kidnap all these high school girls.
Yeah, and on that note, the leader of Boko Haram said he would be selling off many of these girls, if not all of them, no matter what their ages were, to husbands, sold off as like chattel. Some of them may be insurgents. And I want to talk to you about sort of what is happening here in terms of sexual slavery. Nigeria has the 4th largest slave population in the world. So when one talks about the feasibility of actually selling these girls, it is entirely likely that they have been sold or will be sold.
Yeah, I mean, there are indications that some already were sold for $12 each. And, you think about it, these are some of the brightest lights in these villages in northern Nigeria. In an area where female adult literacy is less than 50%, these are girls who've been all the way through school, who are on track to become doctors, teachers, lawyers, and now simply because they sought to get educated, they're now being sold off for $12 each to be the wives of militants. And what is especially aggravating to me is that if you try to think how you can effectively resist the mindset that leads to Boko Haram, it's not drones, it is precisely educating girls. And in that sense, Boko Haram knows what it's doing. It is counteracting the greatest long-term threat to militancy, which is a girl sitting under a tree with a book.
Do you think that this has a chilling effect on girls in other parts of the world or even parts of sub-Saharan Africa that are trying to get an education?
I'm not sure that girls in Cameroon or Chad or elsewhere, that their parents are going to be put off so much by this. But I do think that it's really worrisome that we've seen militants in one place after another take on this backlash against girls' education. And just as aid groups around the world have found that one of the most effective ways to bring about change is to educate girls, so I think militants have found that one of the best ways to stymie forces of change is to burn down those schools, to shoot girls going to school, to blow up those buildings. And so this is fundamentally a fate not just about girls and whether they can learn to read, but about the future of these countries.
New York Times columnist, the great Nick Kristof, thank you as always for your writing, your time, your thoughts. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Alex.